I don't think they have fared well. You don't have to look too far to see that they have been shortchanged in the affairs of this country. And this is not to be Ibomatic or whatever you may call it, but just take a drive from Onitsha to Enugu, and from Enugu to Port Harcourt and back to Onitsha through Owerri. You would not believe that you are in this same country called Nigeria. It's like the people have been abandoned for no fault of theirs, except that they lost a war 50 years or more ago, and that's quite unfortunate. And politically, they haven't fared well. People will tell you, oh, they've made money in business, in commerce. That's not really what should matter to us. We want to be in a country that is inclusive, a country that is tolerable of us, a country that believes that we have contributed our quota. My father went to prison a few times, or went to jail a few times, because he was writing what they considered in those days seditious articles against the British Empire during the quest for independence. And for him to look around and see how they suffered and paid high prices for the gaining of independence for Nigeria, only for the same country they fought for their independence turn around and persecute them and marginalize them, just makes it such an unfortunate situation. And personally, I think that it's a sad commentary in the history of our country. My opinion is very simple, that the only reason why there are agitations, not only in Biafra land, but in other marginalized areas, is because of deprivation. It's simply because people feel that they are not included in the affairs of the country, that they just, when someone in authority would call them nothing, and people would agitate. It's only a tree that hears that it is being cut down and will stand there. People would run, would look for shelter. People would look for alternative to authoritarianism. And that's what I think is responsible for that. But I think there are so many ways to skin a cat. I don't think we have to be violent, to achieve what we want. I think we have to find ways to, reconcile ourselves to the problems that we find in the society. But sometimes violence becomes inevitable when peace is elusive. That's what I think is happening with the likes of Nnamdi Kanu and members of the IPOB. If you treat them unfairly, there would be agitation for fair treatment and justice, equity, and fair play. It's an obvious question with obvious answers. A country without equity and justice is a country lost in hopelessness. It's very, very simple. If you treat people unfairly, I'll say that again, they have no alternative but to seek for justice. And if they can't find justice through peaceful means, they will find alternative means to seek for justice. And that is the problem that we have in this country today. I think we should begin from attitudinal change or changes, whereby everyone, including the followers of the leaders, will begin to change in their attitude to issues. I call it moral rearmament. We have to seek for higher grounds. We have to seek for decorum in everything that we do. Then if you go back to government, we have to decentralize government. We have to find a way through which we can change our constitution. Maybe go back to the 1963 constitution where the regions had the power. This time maybe the states becoming the federating powerful units within the federation, devolving power from the center to the states. That way, we have equity. If you produce, you consume. If you produce, you have money. For instance, if you come to where I am from Okey, we have some agricultural product. If we produce it, we sell it and make our money. If we have mineral resources, majority or the bulk of it should belong to us. That is the only way by which we can change this country. Any other ways would be meaningless, and we'll be wasting our useful time in pursuit of nonsense. Yeah, I think it was such a wonderful, visionary thing for Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan's government to do when they initiated the 2014 National Conference. The objective was to find a way to restructure our country through amendment of the Constitution, because apparently the military came in and skewed our system of government in such disgustingly disequilibrium way that people began to suffer. People began to complain. So Jonathan said, okay, let us come together and have a meeting of the minds of various regions. I think we have 6 regions in the country. Let us come together and sit down and debate and fine-tune the variables in our political system, in our economic system, to find a middle ground, agree on it, and then pass some kind of regulation or law that would change the system of government. And that was an integral part of the delegation that went to that conference. I led the secretariat of the Igbo Southeast, they called it, but it was the Igbo position to the conference. And we marshaled out a very proactive position, which we presented after vigorous debate with the other zones, Northwest, Northeast, North Central, Southwest, and South-South. We were meeting at least 20 hours a day, sometimes less, and debating for 4 months. And at the end of the day, we found what I thought then was a credible position that would have emancipated this country from doom. And we called it the 2014 National Conference position, where many issues were tackled, ranging from citizenship issues to state police issues to fiscal federalism to name it, all sorts of things. There were over 1,000 pages that were submitted to government. Unfortunately, I don't know who dropped the baton, but it has to be Jonathan. He did nothing with it until Buhari came and banished all the good work that we did, and we are now back to square one. And that is the problem of Nigeria today. But if you ask me, those documents are still there. Those points that we made are still very valid. Some are even more contemporary than they were before. For instance, the issue of policing and insecurity. State police. We wanted a dual police system, the federal police, just like the FBI in America, and the local police, whereby the federal police is in Abuja, overlooking most of the things that the state police could not do. For instance, if you're from Okey, where I am from, you would have a policeman drawn from Okey, run by the state government or the regional government. This policeman would know the terrain, speaking the language, understanding the culture, and be able to liaise with the people better than bringing a policeman from Sokoto to come to Okey to police the system. So these were the things that we put in the position paper that we gave to government. And if they had implemented it, we could have had a very solid security system in the states. A lot of people today will say, yes, the state governors are going to usurp the power of the state police and use it to persecute their opponents in the states. What about federal government? Are they doing the same, or is that the same thing they're doing today? Using federal police and the IG system to persecute state governors or opponents, federal and the local. So for me, I think we have to go back to restructure the entire system of this country to find a middle ground to our problems, to re-engineer the entire system. If we do not do it, we're just wasting our time. We're wasting our time, and we're just going to be dragging our feet until this country dissolves into complete anarchy. Well, I would rather you go buy the book and read it, because it's all over the bookshops. But it is an interesting book, and I wrote it out of some sort of euphoria. My daughter asked me to tell her about Biafra because she was doing something in college. And I wrote something, and I said to her, I believe it was a 2-page experience of what happened in Biafra, my little experience in Biafra. And she read it in school, and the class went crazy. And they wanted me to come and talk in our class. They wanted me to, So, and I thought about it, and I said, maybe I should write my story about the war. And I began in this house. And it took me about 2 months to put pen to paper. And I wrote about my experience as a child growing up in Kano, witnessing the crisis, the 1966 schools, and the killings of the Igbo and Eastern Nigerians who were resident in the north. And we running back to the east, thinking that we had escaped the killings. And they came for us in the east, and we began to be killed again. Our homes ravaged, hunger, and we were running all over the place like rats. And then the war came, and we lost 3 million innocent souls for nothing. And I was conscripted as a young child. I believe I was barely 13 years old, and put into the army. And I went to fight in the war. Imagine a child, barely weaned of his mother's milk, being in the jungle of Biafra, a gun slung over my shoulders, trained for about 2-3 weeks on how to use a gun, and sleeping in the jungle and fighting and fighting and fighting with barely any food in my stomach. I saw death, and I saw deprivations of all sorts. It was horrendous. And in my book, I chronicled all these events and told them in such dramatic movie-like ways. And some of the stories I understand were very funny. Some were very traumatic for friends and family members to read. A lot of people never believed that it happened. And people said to me, how come you haven't told us this story in the past? I found it difficult to dwell on the story of that war because it was frightening. It was disturbing to begin to recall what took place during the war. So I kept the story hidden somewhere inside me. But once I began to tell it, it became a revolution of sorts for me. It became therapeutic to the point where I was relieved of some of the pains that I suffered during that war and what I saw with my eyes, the kind of things that adults were not even supposed to see. Some of us children saw. And then that war was a disaster mainly for the Igbo and the Southeasterners, who were made to suffer tremendous losses in lives, in property, and psychological trauma it was for a lot of people. So, you have to go get this book and read it. It is selling like a hot cake, and it's a bestseller. I understand that some people are trying to turn it into a movie, and I can't wait for that to happen. But essentially, this book is about healing. It's not about war, really, essentially. It's about forgiveness, about us coming together to, forgive each other and try to use the experiences and history of that war to make sure that we do not fight any other wars, to make sure that we do not make the mistakes that we made in the past once again, to learn lessons of that war, of the wickedness of that war, and to find out who committed what and hold them accountable, not necessarily in a punitive way, but to talk to them and shame them into not wanting to become part of this sort of atrocities anymore. And I can talk about my book for a whole year without stopping. For me, someone told me that each page in that book is a chapter, and that each chapter is a brand new book. And I enjoin you to go pick up that book and read it if you haven't read it. It's called Biafra, The Horrors of War, The Story of a Child Soldier by Okey Anueyiagu, my humble good self.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, finally, what advice do you have for the Nigerian political class, those in positions of authority, and how do you think this country can move forward?
Well, it's difficult to advise people who think that they know it all. What can you tell them? If you look at our political class today, it's made up of misfits, mostly. People who are uneducated, who are not even supposed to be in that class. How do you become a politician when you have not gone through the school of politics or the school of civilization or school of being a human being? Most of them are people from the past with indecorous history from their past. They're the ones you call the political class today. What am I going to tell them? They look at me and laugh, so I have no advice for them, but I have advice for Nigerians. I want us to wake up and flush these animals out of our political system and find a way to live the way we lived before the war. And even after the war, when I went to university here, if you messed up, we went on the streets and demanded you be removed. We demanded for soldiers to go. They shot our students, they killed some students, but we were there. But today, look at this. They do Big Brother Nigeria or Big Brother Africa. 200 people are voting. 150 people are voting for Big Brother Nigeria. When we have elections, less than 20 million people vote. So what advice can you give the electorate or even give the politicians? They know that we are completely out of our senses when it comes to Nigerian politics. So they will continue to exploit us, continue to deprive us of the goodies that should come to us as good citizens of this country. So I don't have advice for the politicians. They know what they should do. For me, I think most of them should just retire from the game and allow people that have good intentions and good visions to come on stage and change trajectory of the position that the country is going to today.
Thank you very much, sir. We are very grateful to you for joining us for this interview. We hope that we'll have another opportunity to sit with you and discuss with you again. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is an impromptu interview. I was not told about this interview until a few hours ago. I thank you very much for it. Thank you.